So here we are for the practice. We took the most important step, which is showing up. Can we breathe into that? So it's the 4th of July weekend, and one of the things that I have started to add to my practice on the 4th of July weekend is praying for all of our veterans and anyone with PTSD and all of our four-legged friends that experience our 4th of July celebrations not as celebrations but as trauma and re-trauma. Can you feel into that? Can you feel into that without any defensiveness? Like, who loves fireworks and who's really excited and it's not trying to take the sail out of the fireworks and the celebrations? But can you feel how we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences? And for someone that was actively engaged in the military and has PTSD, the 4th of July, which is ironically, right, a celebration of our freedoms and our celebration of our nation and all of the positive aspects of it, and honoring the people that stand for those positive aspects of it, and honoring life. And it's a night of trauma for some. I didn't know that for a while. I wasn't aware of that for a while, but now it's part of my practice to pray for all of our little dogs that go under beds. Who has that? You know, post on Facebook if you have that, right? Right? I have a beloved whose daughter and family member of mine was severely injured and attacked by a dog on the 4th of July. With fireworks going off and trying to calm that dog. But of course, the dog was in trauma, and so a major injury happened. So often, external experiences can cause trauma. We can engage in trauma together, and we do every day. And we don't always know, we're not always aware, but part of being alive is having experiences, and experiences are something that we can't argue with. Have we learned that yet? That you don't argue with emotions and you don't argue with experiences. They are what they are. Some people say, same storm, different boat. Same storm, different boat. There's the what happens, and then there's our experience of what happens. So to one individual, an experience could bring light, could bring celebration, could be fun, and to another, it could be trauma. Same thing with an interaction, right? Any experience. So how do we use that knowing to create mindfulness in our own lives and with each other and with the world around us? This is life. We experience the same storms, and we have different boats. How is your boat doing? How is your boat doing right now? Just tune into that. How are you in your boat right now, in life? In the current what is in your world, within you and the world around you? How are you weathering it? Unity is about practical tools. It's about practical spirituality. It's not about just a Sunday practice or an experience of when we walk into a door or when we do something for 1 hour. It's about taking spiritual principles and spiritual practice and making it meaningful for the rest of our lives, for all of the parts of our lives, for when we go home and we close the door, for when we breathe in and we enter the inner chamber, and for when we interact with the world around us. Unity is about mindfulness tools. It's about going about that work to build a better boat. It's about freedom, emotional freedom, techniques for inner freedom. So what sinks your boat? What are your triggers? What are your fireworks? Are we aware of them? Are we aware of what rocks our boat? I know for a lot of people, comparison is a big ship sinker. comparison, engaging in the art of comparison, whether it's comparing our lives to someone else, whether it's comparing our lives to the life we imagined, whether it's comparing our childhood to someone else's childhood, whether it's we comparing our spiritual community to another spiritual community, whatever it is, comparison kills. But it is one of the most basic aspects of the human mind. The human mind just does it, right? It's like it does it before you can even choose it. So can we add mindfulness to that? Can we recognize the practices and the patterns that we engage in from day to day, from moment to moment, that sink our ship, and begin to put spiritual practice and sacred attention in those areas? Being unseen or feeling under-acknowledged, feeling invisible, that can be a ship sinker. Blame, shame, looking for someone to be accountable for my experience, my emotions, my whatever it is, fill in the blank. My nation, my world, internally or externally, the society in which I live. Wayne Mueller, and we're going to hear a little bit from his book, but in the book, The Legacy of the Heart, he talks about a time when he was called in to do some healing work in a community, and it was healing work around juvenile justice. And in this work, he explains that when he, got started and started kind of addressing the field and listening, he realized that it was just a blame cycle. Everyone was blaming someone else, like whether the parents were blaming the children and the people in the community were blaming these people and the police were blaming that and the store owners were blaming that, but it was just this cycle. And so he went into that work and he said, I will do this work with you, but I will do it on one condition, that we have one rule, and the rule is that pain is nobody's fault. Pain is nobody's fault. And they agreed, and when they began to engage from that space with that agreement, not that it doesn't mean that there aren't causes for pain, right? Not that it doesn't mean that you can't find reasons and spaces and places where it was generated, where it was caused, but just going into the premise of we're not going to be in blame or shame. We're just going to let that step aside, let that sit aside, let that be put aside for the moment so we can be present to what underlies this, what the real solutions are, where we can go with this. And he said when that happened, when they made that shift, they were able to make progress. There was actually real listening, real dialogue, real movement, real motion. But oftentimes we get stuck in our pain. We get stuck waiting and watching for someone to be accountable, someone to be responsible, someone to say, I did it, and someone to fix the past that already happened. What else can sink your boat? Approval, needing approval, a sense of belonging, a challenge to your identity or your role, a shift, loss, grief, change, being with the unknown. All of these things can spiral us into disaster thinking, a downward spiral, the cycle of being stuck, feelings of constriction, everything that is the opposite of freedom, yet we do them regularly. We engage in them regularly. They come to visit us as if knocking on our door at a peaceful little home and say, can I come in? And what do we generally do? We generally flow open the doors and say, come on in, let's sit for a while. And not let's sit for mindfulness, not let's sit for tea and curiosity, but let's sit and soak in these cycles of thinking that are not useful, these cycles of emotion that don't go anywhere. So can we apply the spiritual practice? Can we apply mindfulness so that we can watch, so that we can observe the storm and observe the boat, so that we can lead ourselves into greater freedoms rather than feeling constricted? There are more than enough opportunities in this day and age to feel constricted. And inner freedom Inner freedom is something that only we can give ourselves when we begin to be fully aware of how we operate in our own being and in the world around us. There's a psychologist out of the University of California, Roxanne Cohen-Silver, and she talks about cascading collective trauma. And she said that's what we need to be mindful of these days. That's what we are in, that in our world right now, we have been experiencing cascading collective trauma. You know from probably psychology or just your own life that it's time to be mindful when you have, what do they say, any 3 big changes, right? So if you have a move of your home, if you have a new job, if you have a new family member or a loss, any of these things, any one of these things can put someone into a space where they need to really be gentle with themselves, where they need to key into support, where they need to just slow everything down and increase mindfulness. But boy, when you have a few areas of your life that have changed, maybe an identity shift, maybe a child is graduating and leaves the home, maybe your role has changed, whatever it is. Because we're loosening our identity, and we in the human condition get identified with our roles, identified with things the way they are, with things the way we think they should be. We get into this comparison of comparing the present moment of what we want it to be or what we think it should be. And the one thing life promises is change. And she says in all of her time in her work with trauma, we are now in this period of cascading trauma where it's been one thing after another in our own lives and collectively. Can we really presence that together? Presence that in our world, that's where people are. Even if it's not where you are empowered by knowing where the collective is. So that you can be present to it, so you can be a healing balm. That's what we're here to be, is the presence of healing, the presence of light, the presence of freedom and expansion. Awakening, awareness, love, life. So can we acknowledge where we are? One of the greatest tools in expanding emotional freedom, breaking out of constriction, is being able to see something for what it is, being able to see it and name it. Sometimes just that releases the pressure. Like taking the lid off of a teapot. Just being able to name it and see it can help alleviate some of the energy. But oftentimes we're caught just running from things, running from life, running from feelings, running from what is, running from the present moment. James Trapp, who is one of our great unity ministers here today, he led our unity movement for quite some time, and he always talked about the option to be pushed by pain or pulled by a vision. Pushed by pain or pulled by a vision. James Trapp. And he said the tendency is to want to run away from what doesn't feel good. But instead we need to have something that we're looking towards, that we're going to. A lot of times when we're in our deepest times of growth, it feels like our greatest unraveling. We don't always know that when we're growing, something good is emerging. Because it doesn't always feel good. We don't have the perspective. So perspective is one of the greatest tools. Gaining perspective is one of the tools that helps us alleviate the pressure and begin to free ourselves. There's a quote by an unknown author that says, "You will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. True power is sitting back and observing things with logic." True power is sitting back. So can we give ourselves the gift of perception, to sit back? And how do we gain the gift of perception? One way is taking the bird's eye view, right? A lot of times in hindsight, we realize it was the best time of our lives. Something incredible was happening. Oh my gosh, I had this. I was talking with a friend recently about some of the stresses in life. And she was so tuned into, this is the best time. Look at what's here right now. Look at what's going on. We can't let it pass us by, that there is a magic happening right now. Even if we feel this, that, and the other thing, we are going to look back at this time. So can we do that to ourselves? Can we do that with ourselves? Can we do that with our world? Can we move into the future and then come back to the now to see that we are where we are right here, and it's safe and it's okay to be in it? It doesn't feel safe all of the time. It can feel like fireworks going off right under your feet. But the present moment is always the one moment that is designed for us. The present moment is always the one moment that is designed for our evolution and our growth and our emancipation. The present moment is the one moment that is divinely designed when we are in it, when we are fully in it, and when we're in it with a spiritual practice, that if we are to look with a spiritual lens and perspective and divine perception, our growth is assured when we say yes to this moment. Not because it's good, not because it feels good, not because our boat doesn't have holes in it, but because it's the one moment from which we can fully birth everything that comes next with mindfulness. So what tools do we have? We have perspective, the bird's eye view, watching the things that happen, being aware of these cascading traumas, or being aware of the things in your life, your family's life, your world. Being aware, giving them space and time to really acknowledge and to see them, not to let them go unseen so that they build up a field around them, so that they have to scream louder and louder and louder to get your attention, to get my intention. Can we really be present and presence? Can we close the gap of perception with a perspective that allows us to see more than meets the eye? We can also do that by sharing and getting together with others, right? Others in the same situation, others that have more wisdom than we have in a certain area, others that have a different perspective, others that can give us reflection of ourselves, reflection on our world. Can we call in that wisdom, bring it into each moment for our growth? Close the gap of mindfulness. Can we also, beyond using our perception and our perspective, can we have something that we're moving toward? A vision that pulls us. There is a book that I'm listening to that referred to some research, and it was research about these mice and what motivates them. And there were 2 experiments, and in one, there's a mouse in a maze, and they're trying to see how fast the mouse gets to the other end of the maze. Same thing in the other one. But on one, you have an owl chasing that mouse. That would make you move pretty fast, right? The cascading traumas are kind of like the owl. Boom. And on the other, there's a piece of cheese at the end of the maze. And so, which mouse gets there faster? Well, you imagine which one's running faster, right? The one with the owl is probably the one running faster. But the one that gets there faster is the one with the cheese. Not because you can see the cheese, you could smell the cheese, right? But what has to happen? There has to be a coming back. There has to be a getting tuned in. I mean, just think about yourself. Think about yourself being that mouse. Are you that mouse? Sometimes I feel like I'm that mouse. We have to get quiet in life to find the cheese. We have to use our senses. With the owl, we're bumping up against the walls, trying to crawl over the top, doing anything to get away. That's the human condition. But the spiritual condition reminds us to apply our tools, to use our senses and to engage in mindfulness. And what does that look like? It looks like meditation. Anytime that the world around us or the world within us experiences any sort of struggle, it is a time for more mindfulness. It's a time to sit in the silence, because the silence is the thing that helps all of us, all parts of ourselves, not react as frantically, not fall into things, roll into things, react to things. But it helps us draw on that higher capacity that is within each one of us to be pulled towards what's next, to be guided, to be led, to be invited in. But it takes going slowly, it takes quieting down. If we just look at the world around us with the senses that we have, we can judge, and those judgments in so many moments are completely off base. You know, recently I was processing what's going on with our spiritual community, because there's a lot of change, isn't there? There's a lot of change. And we've experienced that change together and as individuals. There's been a lot of shift. And it hasn't been until I took the step to talk to other people to find out what their perspective was, what their perception was, what their experience was, and to talk to other ministers and other ministries to see what's going on in the field. It's not until I can get out of my own view and what I see with my own eyes that I can see with a greater perspective what's going on in this spiritual community. If you just look at what's in front of you, sometimes you may think things are not as they appear. But talking to ministers in other places and hearing what's going on or what has gone on and where they are in their spiritual community was incredibly reassuring. Reminding me that we are well. Reminding me that there is a new frontier and we're all navigating it together. So in any stage of your life, do you reach out? We're taught so often to reach in, but it's also important to reach out, to be able to put names to things and allow ourselves the space and the grace to process. Perspective. Moving towards something rather than away from things. Can you hear that on a collective level? Moving towards something that works rather than away from things that don't work. If we keep running away from things that don't work, from things that are difficult, rather than moving towards something that works, we do ourselves a disservice. You know, in Unity, we teach affirmations and denials, and one of the reasons we teach affirmations in the way we do, you do many more affirmations than you do denials, because denials is the process where you take whatever is like the deepest rooted, stuck stuff, and you kind of start chiseling it out with a hammer. But you don't want to get stuck too much in denials because it focuses to some degree on the negative. You want to stay in the affirmations, but also be able to lift up the things that are rooted with the denials. So when something feels really stuck, it's not denying that that thing is happening, but it's denying that that has any power over us. But if we take our eyes and we're always looking at everything that we feel like has power over us, everything that we feel like is restricting our freedom or restricting our sense of love and life and wellness, then we can get that myopic vision, and instead we're just pushed by our pain. So breathing into our affirmations, I claim my emotional freedom. I can be present without being pulled in. I can be informed without identifying with the information. I claim my emotional freedom. Can we take the third tool, the third step? So we have perspective, our perception and our perspective, gaining a higher ground, gaining higher perception. We have not running away from things, but moving toward a vision and getting quiet and still and using meditation and mindfulness to sense that vision, to smell the cheese, to see what's there. And the third is grounding. Grounding in our own energy, grounding in what is, grounding in the current moment. That includes allowing people to have their experiences, not arguing with emotions, setting up healthy boundaries for ourselves, getting out of expectations and into the now moment, the only moment that is. Releasing comparison, releasing comparisons of life, others' life, even thinking that we know, recognizing we don't even know. We don't even know if we'd want. What is that saying like about answered prayers? And it's like, the number of answered prayers that are really the ones that we didn't want. It's like, can we let go? Can we pray with an open hand that we lift up? Oh, is this or something better? Can we trust this moment? Rather than trying to wrangle it, manipulate it, let it fill into our little small idea of the expectations of what we think would have been better. We think if we had this, everything would have been better. We think if it all played out like this, nothing would be what it is. But we are here right now in the one moment that matters, in the one space where all movement and motion and life occurs. And unless we say yes to it, we deny our freedom. Wayne Mueller said, "How many gentle moments do we poison each day when we cling to our expectations?" How many gentle moments do we poison each day we cling to our expectations? From the book Legacy of the Heart, he goes on to say, "Some expectations are extremely difficult to relinquish. Some of us still expect our parents, friends, or spouses to finally become the loving people we always wanted them to be. We think of how it might have been different if only the right person or career had come along. Some of us are still so attached to these hopes that we have not yet really begun our lives in earnest. We are still patiently waiting for the world to match our perfect picture before we start. How much longer can we wait? Our challenge is to learn to meet whatever is in the moment, in this moment, without condition, without comparing it to what should have been, practicing non-attachment, letting go of our expectations, and meeting the moment face to face. We are free to appreciate whatever is set before us, to drink deeply from what is alive and beautiful in that instant. Practicing non-attachment," he says, letting go of our expectations and meeting the moment face to face, we are free to appreciate whatever is set before us, to drink deeply from what is alive and beautiful in that instant. That is the key to loving your life, to loving the moment. Loving our lives is not about expecting something from life, expecting to get it because, we love it. It's about treating your life as if it is a beautiful child, a newborn that you are given to nurture, to love your life, to bring your love to that life, to each present moment, as if it is a newborn needing your care, your nurturing, your attention, your love, needing grace, needing space to grow, needing all things love, all things good, all things God from you? Can we love our lives in that way, in this moment, and give ourselves the internal freedom to build a better boat, to weather the storm, to be present in each moment? Namaste. Let's breathe for a moment together and take ourselves into a time of meditation, just inhaling and exhaling, allowing ourselves to become so fully present right here and right now. There is one moment. It is this moment I am given. It is this moment emerging in and through and as my awareness. So consciously I bring my full attention and intention into this moment, knowing that it's safe to be here. There is no thing I need to run from. As I inhale and exhale, I ask for Lady Wisdom to guide my perception, expand my perspective, I invite things that need to be a little smaller to shrink, to things that are unworthy of my attention, my worry, my anxiety. If they are unworthy of that, let them dissolve. If they need my attention, let it be through mindfulness, prayer, and awareness. I let go of emotions that rock my boat. As I breathe in to the spiritual practice that expands my awareness, I am grounded. Right here and right now, meeting this moment with all of the resources necessary and needed. I call forth all the wisdom around me and within me. As I inhale and exhale, I soften the space in my life for grace. May I not miss the moments that are before me. May I fully and deeply and completely know the divine safety in each moment. That safety that goes beyond time or space, beyond conditions or circumstances, beyond what appears to be unraveling or building up. Inhaling and exhaling, I catch the gentle moments before me. I am awake. I am aware. I am willing. Inhaling and and exhaling, we enter the inner silence where there is freedom and fullness. Inhaling and exhaling, I make a commitment right here and right now to myself, to my inner freedom, to my emotional freedom. I will not run away. I will deepen. I will be grounded. I will expand. I will center myself in the practice, in the peace within. By the power of this practice, may all beings have freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know God as love and themselves as emanations of this love. May all beings know we are born blessed and here to be a blessing. Namaste.